Hi there, it's Angela. It's definitely been a long time since I posted on here, and I'm really happy to be back. I'm excited to be talking about more books, and today I thought I would bring back some fun recommendations with some romances. Personally, I love a good romance. I think they're great slump breakers, but even though I do find the majority of romances pretty entertaining, I'm really hard to please when it comes to all the romances that I come across. I think I did a little bit of a data poll through my Goodreads in the past couple years, and out of the 51 romances that I did read, I gave them an average of like 3.5 stars. So they were all entertaining at the time, but not necessarily ones that I love or would rave or recommend necessarily. And I think that's honestly because I'm really picky when it comes to tropes, if there's too many tropes or if there's weird tropes that I don't like. And I'm also really picky when it comes to like things that give me the ick. So if I get an ick when I read a romance novel, it's also completely done for me. With that being said, today I have 6 recommendations for some of my favorite top romances. These are the ones that I have probably reread multiple times, that I will gush and rave about. They're the ones that I will actively recommend to people, and that I have previously recommended here. So let's get to the recommendation. The first book on my list is my all-time favorite romance novel. I have recommended it here many times, and I have reread it also probably the most out of all the books that I've had on my shelves, and it is The Kiss Quotient by Helen Hoang. This book follows Stella, who doesn't have a ton of confidence or experience when it comes to the romance department, partly because she is on the autism spectrum, and so she decides that she's going to tackle this issue in her life by hiring an escort to help teach her the physicalities of a relationship. What she doesn't expect is that she forms a pretty deep connection with this random person and finds that he is definitely more than just somebody who can teach her how to be a better girlfriend for her future partner. Now, the reason why I like this book is mainly because I have such a soft spot for all the characters and a lot of like the different plot lines. So firstly, Stella, I have a lot of empathy for her because she is this late bloomer, and her journey into learning more about herself and how she likes to be in relationships is really sweet and also very heartwarming. I also really liked Michael, who is the escort that she hires, because he seems very superficial and kind of like nothing going on the surface, but as you dig deep you realize that like he puts up this front for a lot of the people in his lives, and he actually cares really deeply about every facet of his life, like his family, his job and aspirations. And I think that the two of them mesh really well, and the way that their relationship develops is, I'll bet, unconventional, but I think that it's relatively, no, I can't even say it's realistic, but it's just a fun journey. I also particularly like this book above a lot of the other romances because the vulnerability in this novel has a lot to do with Michael and his family, and I think that their family dynamic is something that really hits close to home and that I find really like heart-wrenching, and I find Stella's integration into his family to be also one of the most important parts of developing the book, and so that's something that I look forward to reading every single time I do. If you're looking for a book that has a lot of fun delving into romances as an adult, if you're looking for a book that has these really tender, vulnerable, heartwarming moments with family, also if you're looking for this book of somebody who seems to have everything together, still trying to figure out these major pieces of their lives, I would really recommend The Kiss Quotient by Helen Hoang. The next book that I have recommended is Bet on It by Jody Slaughter. This book follows Aja, who has just moved back to a small town in South Carolina, basically to escape her life from the big city. And on a whim, she meets Walker, who has also moved back to this town to take care of his grandma. They initially meet at a bingo hall of all places, mainly because of Walker's grandma, but slowly their friendship develops into something more. What I always remember about this book is that it features characters that seem very vulnerable and real and like perfectly imperfect. They're two people who are both dealing with pretty serious and emotionally taxing things from both their past and present. And while they do find support in each other and in their relationship, they also tackle these things on their own and grow as individuals. I would also say that this book has just a really good, like, tender chemistry between the two. They don't really play around like with games. They're pretty direct in their communication. And I think if you want want something that is just good, wholesome romance with none of the miscommunication and none of the like dating games that some other books feature, I think you'll really like this book. The next book is something I definitely read recently, I think within the last 2 months, and that is All Roads Lead Here by Mariana Zapata. This book follows Aurora, who has just moved to a small town in the Colorado mountains, basically using her mom's journals as a spiritual guide to rediscover herself. She's following these hikes from her mom's journal and all the notes that she took there, try to reconnect with parts of her past. She initially gets to a rocky start in the town because she has this misunderstanding with her landlord, Rhodes, but as they get to know each other, as she gets to integrate herself into the town and into her old friend groups, her and Rhodes' relationship also develops and they find a really strong connection in each other. If you've been around BookTube or BookTok or just the romance book space, I think you will have definitely heard of Mariana Zapata. She is the queen of slow burn. And when I say slow burn, I mean slow 500 page plus, they barely brush hands kind of slow burn. But because the relationship is taken so slow, what I think you see is this very realistic development and deepening and strengthening of the relationship, not only between Aurora and Rhodes, but also between Aurora and Rhodes' son, between her and the people in the town that she's just meeting and kind of like almost, reintegrating back into. If we were to talk in tropes, this is the perfect slow burn, sunshine, grumpy, small town romance, all those things. If those appeal to you, you'll like this book. But most importantly, it's a sweet romance about two people who found love when they were least expecting to. The next recommendation I have is Our Infinite Fates by Laura Steven. This book follows Evelyn and Arden. They have reincarnated over and over again, century after century. They've always managed to find each other, fall in love, but on their 18th birthday, they both must die. And it's usually Arden who's trying to kill Evelyn. And so in this current timeline, Evelyn has finally found something that she has to live for. Her younger sister needs a bone marrow transplant specifically from Evelyn. Her goal is to first find Arden and stop them from killing her, and her second is to break this endless curse that they are trapped in. This book is romance. If you are a soft, sweet, romantic at heart, if you believe in fate, if you believe in happily ever after, if any of those things sound like they are you, you will absolutely love this book. This is absolutely something for the romantics, the soft ones at heart. What I personally loved about this book was that even though we could have just left it at, oh, they fell in love, century after century, several thousand times over and over again, we actually get vignettes of their love story. So we see from the beginning all the way to the present day how their love has changed and shaped itself and altered from being either familial love or being friendship love or being really passionate love or being very sweet, somber, tender kind of love. It's really, really a beautiful relationship to explore, especially since they've had centuries to do it. This also borders on the more fantastical side of romance, not necessarily romantasy. There's little elements of magic, and obviously because they reincarnate again and again, there's discussions of like life after death or what is it after death, things like that. So definitely would recommend this book. It's also written really beautifully, and this has made me weep and absolutely tugged at my heartstrings. The next book I have is The Lost Story by Meg Schaefer. This follows our two main characters, Jeremy and Rafe. As young boys, they disappeared into a forest and then emerged 6 months later completely fine. It set the whole country into a panic because there's these two boys who just went missing, but something happened to them during those 6 months that completely changed their life. Now, as adults, Jeremy has this almost supernatural knack for finding people who are missing, and Rafe is a reclusive artist. They also no longer speak to each other, but they are brought together when a woman is desperate to find her missing sister, who also disappeared into the same forest. And they have to come together to revisit their past and what happened those 6 months. Based on the previous book Meg Schaefer wrote called The Wishing Game, as well as A Lost Story, I find that she has this real knack for making fairy tales for adults. They have a very whimsical and fantastical kind of story structure that makes this feel like, yeah, even though we're in the real world, somehow it feels like we're in this alternate dimension where you could see unicorns and fairies and talking creatures just coming out from the woods. And this story is no different. It follows these two people who are rediscovering their relationship as adults, as well as revisiting their past as children. It's also a great slow burn because we have to very carefully peel back layers on their past, on their relationship, on their love for each other. And the final book that I have to recommend to you is not just one book, it's a whole series. I have the Hidden Legacy series right here, or at least part of it. I'm missing one final book, but the Hidden Legacy series by Alona Andrews. The Hidden Legacy series is set in a world where people have discovered this potion that basically gives them supernatural powers, and eventually people have settled down into these different houses where each house has a specific set of powers, and they are all very influential and wealthy in society. We specifically follow our main character, Nevada, who runs her own detective agency that is definitely struggling a little bit, and so she decides to take on this very risky but high reward case to track down this wanted man. Unfortunately, there is somebody else who is also tracking down this man, and his name is Connor Rogan. He is one of the, if not the most wealthiest, richest, powerful men in the city, and he doesn't want Nevada in his way. Unfortunately, both of them need each other's specific intel, and Nevada is definitely not letting Rogan get away with taking her case from her, so they have to figure out a way to work together and track down this guy. Now, I would say that this series is not traditionally romance in the sense that it's just not the kind of like sweet, soft romance book that follows only their relationship. This is very plot heavy in the sense that we do get an exploration into the actual world itself. We get a lot of really high intensity action scenes. We have a lot of exploration into the power dynamic between the different houses. And that is actually what I love about this series so much, and the reason why I have reread it several times. I find the duo's writing style really easy to read, very fast paced. The action is impeccable. It's so fun to read. The romance between Nevada and Rogan is kind of just like a nice cherry on top. And while I've talked about Nevada and Rogan's romance in the first trilogy, I would be remiss not to mention Catalina's romance with, what's his name? Alessandro, the dashing Alessandro in the spin-off to the original trilogy. If you are somebody who likes urban romances, if you like something where there's a splash of fantasy set in a mostly modern real world, I think you will absolutely love this series, and I would highly recommend you check it out. Those are all the romances that I want to recommend to you all today. If you have any romances that you've read recently that you've absolutely loved, please let me know in the comments. I'm always looking to add more into my collection. Right now, I'm actually starting Wolfsong by DJ Clune. If you've read that, please let me know what you think about it, and I'm excited to get into it. Thank you for watching. I appreciate you all, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye!